welcome back to the show. Hopefully you will never need a trip to the emergency room, but it's really good to stay informed. And here to tell us more about it, what to expect, we welcome Dr. Jennifer Termeer with Mission Hospital.
Thanks,
Jennifer, Dr. Jennifer.
Yes, good morning.
I love that ring. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks for the invitation.
This is a very important subject, I think. It's got to be, I would imagine, one of the most scary times in a person's life to have to go visit the ER. So hopefully we can take a little bit of fear out of potential patients' minds. So tell us about Providence Mission Hospital ER.
Well, we do understand at Providence that nobody wishes to be in the emergency room, right? This is everybody's worst day when you end up as a patient. But I think we're lucky to have Providence in our community because it is a certified trauma center, a pediatric center, an adult center, a cardiac center, a stroke center. We have all the certifications you could need to make sure that we have all the care available for our community.
So it really makes it a unique asset
to
this community.
It definitely does.
That covers a broad range.
It does.
Wow, oh my goodness. So is there anything new or different as you compare yourselves to other hospitals in the area? What's the approach that makes it so unique?
I think that's a great question, and really everybody is looking at this in hospital medicine across the country. Is our communities have grown so quickly beyond the resources we have available and beyond our bed space. So if you go to any emergency room, you'll find that the waiting room is full.
Right.
Because the hospital is full.
Right.
So there are no beds available. So what we've done at Providence is we've worked with our physician and our nursing team to come to a plan to bring the care to the patients.
Really?
Instead of waiting for the patients to come to us to provide the care. So we start our care at the front door with a nurse who's watching patients walk in and just assessing them and determining if they need to immediately skip an assessment phase and go directly as a critical patient to the back, or if they're appropriate to stay and be triaged and seen by a provider at the front door.
And so you're specifically talking about people who are walking in as opposed
Correct.
to somebody who's being brought in via ambulance or other source, right?
Correct.
Emergency
Majority of the volume in emergency room comes through the front door. It comes as a walk-in. You bring your family member, your children, your parent. They just don't seem quite right. You bring them into that door. And those are the patients that we're talking about now, because that's about 70 to 80% of our volume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's got to be a very frustrating experience when you're sitting there with your loved one and you're highly concerned with whatever's going on.
Right.
And you're looking around going, this room is full. When are we ever going to get taken back? When are we ever going to be seen?
Right. So we took away the taken back, right? And so allowing patients to be seen as they walk in the door, having providers up front, has changed everything we do in emergency medicine at Providence. And before we started this in 2023, it took you approximately 87 minutes to see a provider to get to the back, right? And so now we see a provider within 10 minutes. In fact, this month it was 7 minutes.
Oh,
so
my
within
goodness.
7 minutes of arrival, you've been triaged, you've seen a provider, you've been assessed, you have orders placed, and then you can get taken to a separate waiting area where you get your labs completed, you wait for radiology, and you get your medications. And in the past, when it took 87 minutes to see a provider, it took you 2 hours before you received any medication. Now it takes 27 minutes.
Oh my gosh, you're cutting off about 90% of that waiting time.
Yes.
Do you see or hear of other hospitals emulating this formula?
I see it in many different ways. I've worked across the country actually in emergency medicine, and I think everybody realizes the importance of not waiting for that bed any longer. It's just not safe medicine. But I think what we've done at Providence and matching the nurses with the providers is pretty novel, allowing that care to happen so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So we've touched a little bit on that type of experience, but take us through the experience from arrival to hopefully departure in less than 2 hours. What can patients in the meantime generally expect?
Well, some days are different than others, right? And some patients are different than others. So let's say you walk in and that front nurse that's watching everybody walk in from the parking lot assesses you and thinks that there's really something wrong, right? Her spidey sense is stimulated. Mm-hmm. She will get that patient to the back within a couple of minutes to be seen in the back. And sometimes we don't have beds available and you're sitting in the back as you'd be sitting in the waiting room, but you're sitting in front of the physician and the nurses. And you may go immediately to CT scan, or you might start your care in the trauma bay with our trauma team, or you might come to our chest pain bed, or you might come to our stroke bed. But if that need arises, we'll get that care started pretty quickly. For anybody that doesn't need to come to the back, it's probably a good thing, right? If you swoop to the back, that's right. When you're should maybe start to worry a little. We'll try to alleviate that worry. But for everyone else, the care that you'll receive will be in the waiting room until we can get you to a spot. You will get a private bed, talk to a physician one-on-one, get that time alone that you need to answer your questions. And sometimes, once you receive your medicines, you feel better. And you think, gosh, I'm good.
There's a solution.
My lab work looks great. I can do this at home. I don't need to be in the hospital. Right. And if that's the case, we'll get you home.
Yeah. Do you find that people who are remaining in the waiting room get a little agitated because they were there first? How do you deal with that? Sometimes,
but I'll tell you, we've put a lot of work in this last year also into reminding caregivers why they're doing the emergency room and there, right? During COVID, they really felt jaded. We worked so hard. We found that the caregivers really lost that empathy and they forgot why they were in emergency medicine. They really just felt abandoned by everyone. So we've spent the last 18 months just reiterating to the team how important they are, meaning that there's a reason why they're in the emergency room, right? They chose the emergency room for this reason, to be there for patients on their worst day. Mm-hmm. And just in reminding them that, we're really seeing that their empathy has come back and they are able to sit there and listen to these patients and their frustrations, right, and not take that frustration on themselves, sure, but really explain to the patient they're okay. We have not forgotten about them. And sometimes there are patients that are sicker. Be gracious that you're not sicker, but we promise we will not forget you.
Right, exactly.
And I think that has really helped the caregivers to be able to manage the expectations for their patients.
Well, it's got to be a high stress situation. And the whole ER department, I mean, they make series and movies based on what happens in those departments. So
yes.
So speaking of those departments, so Mission Hospital is a level 1 trauma center for both pediatric and adults.
It's a level 2 trauma center.
Level 2.
There's not much difference between 1 and 2. There's a specialty that you have to have 24 hours in-house to be a level 1, and so we're a level 2.
I see.
We do have the specialty resources available, but they're not in the hospital 24 hours a day waiting for the patients to come in. That's the difference.
Got it.
But we are level 2 for adults and trauma, and adults and pediatrics, excuse me. And what that means for our patients and our community and our neighbors and our family is that if something were to happen in you and your children, or you and your parents, if you have older parents, you all get to stay together.
Wonderful.
You're not separated.
Wonderful.
So you're cared for by the same trauma team. Right? The emergency room is certified for both adults and pediatrics, and so is our trauma team. So you get to see the same physicians, you're cared for together, you don't have to be separated. And when it comes to trauma, especially a motor vehicle accident on the 5 or the 405, let's say, when you have an accident like that, maybe in North County or elsewhere, you're usually separated. So the parents are sent to one hospital and the children to another.
Oh my goodness.
And you can imagine, Bree, that does not go well.
Not at all. That's traumatizing in and of itself.
Very much so. And so a lot of times you have parents who refuse to get treatment because they want to be with their children.
Right.
So this allows the families to come together to Mission and get the care that they need and make sure that everybody gets the appropriate care.
Wonderful. So just to wrap it up, is there anything that people should know before they end up in the emergency department?
It's a great question. And a little bit of a complex question. I would say a lot of people don't know when it's appropriate to go to the emergency room.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I would say for anyone that's having chest pain, call 911. The medics will assess you and they'll take you to your closest cardiac receiving center. Mm-hmm. For anyone with neurologic complaints, let's say dizziness and a headache, or maybe numbness, or you notice the face looks funny on your family member, call 911. The medics will take them to the stroke center that's closest to you, which is where you want to be. For everything else, I would say if you're not feeling well, call your primary care doctor. They're a great resource. And we're lucky in this community to have some amazing primary care physicians. I would call them and get their input on how you're feeling. If they can't get you an appointment or they think it's too complex, they'll tell you to go to the emergency room. And I think that's appropriate.
Wow. Well, with that, thank you so much for joining us here today. That's a lot of valuable information, hopefully information that none of our viewers will need, but very important nonetheless.
Thank you for your time, Bree.
Dr. Jennifer Termeer from Mission Hospital, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. You're watching This Day on Village TV. Stay with us.